We are indeed going to hear the letter of Paul to Titus in the first chapter of that division, and we'll hear verses 1 to 9. Listen for God's word to us today. Paul, a servant of God and an apostle of Jesus Christ for the sake of the faith of God's elect, and the knowledge of the truth that is in accordance with godliness, in the hope that of eternal life that God, who never lies, promised before the ages began. In due time he revealed his word through the proclamation with which I have been entrusted by the command of God our Savior. To Titus, my loyal child in the faith we share, grace and peace from God the Father and Christ Jesus our Savior. I left you behind in Crete for this reason, so that you should put in order what remained to be done, and should appoint elders in every town as I directed you. Someone who is blameless, married but once, whose children are believers, not accused of debauchery and not rebellious. For a bishop, an overseer, as God's steward, must be blameless. He must not be arrogant or quick-tempered or addicted to wine or violent or greedy for gain. But he must be hospitable, a lover of goodness, prudent, upright, devout, and self-controlled. He must have a firm grasp of the word that is trustworthy in accordance with the teaching, so that he may be able both to preach with sound doctrine and to refute those who contradict it. This is the word of the Lord. I don't know if you're one of those who notices a sermon title, but if you are, you may be saying to yourself, well, here's a guy who's retired. He's lucky to have anybody to ask him to preach ever again. Yet he's wondering how come he got stuck here. The sermon title suggests doubt, which is my intent, but not for that reason. I believe we all feel a sense of doubt at many intersections of our life, personal and professional, even our church lives. And uncertainty and a lack of true comprehension about where we are and why we are where we are. Above all, what in God's name are we going to do next? If there is anybody here who can say, as I myself must, that they have or do have such uncertainty, then I invite you to find a fellow traveler in the person of Titus. Now, as you hear, we don't hear from Titus directly, but we hear what Paul, in God's name, says to Titus in his quandary and says to us in our own. So I want to come before you today with this thought. I hope you will find a new and deeper purpose for your life. I am making the basic proposition today that every purpose in life runs out automatically. Now, I've already said two things. I hope today that you will renew your purpose in life, because every purpose in life runs out. The purpose of a business is not enough to carry it through 20 years unless it gets revised. The purpose of a marriage is not enough to carry it through 10 or 20 years unless it is renewed. The purpose of an existing church like this esteemed congregation is not enough. It is not reevaluated. The purpose of being a church member is not enough to carry you through life if it's been 4 or 5 years since you rededicated yourself to it. We have a myth that in our adolescence we made a religious commitment and that will be enough to carry us through life. That is not true. And that is exactly what caused this letter to Titus to be written. Titus had been a faithful servant, and he got assigned to the island of Crete. And in a sense, he wrote to Paul and said, how come I got stuck in Crete? Now, Crete is 157 miles long, 37 miles wide at its widest, 7 at its narrowest. Every civilization of the Mediterranean had washed across it. They had their own notoriousness, so that Paul said, one of those Cretans themselves said they were all vicious, lazy liars. It was not a place one sought out for a pastorate, not even an interim pastor. And as Titus sat there thinking of all of his experiences with Paul, Titus sent Paul a letter we do not have. Dear Paul, I love you dearly in Jesus, but how come I get stuck in Crete? 157 miles long, 37 miles wide. I've been from one end to the other already. There's no place left to go. What am I doing here? Now this lament, I dare say, applies to everyone sitting here today. I know that I'm looking this morning at congregations trying to get familiar with some new faces in the pulpit week after week. You may also be vaguely wondering about what kind of changes might be going to have to take place as you consider the future of this church, calling a new interim and then perhaps a pastor after that. Just what will you choose to do and be? Who can know exactly where these things will lead? You just can't know these things. There's perhaps a little doubt and a little wonderment. And I'm thinking, too, that I'm preaching here in the presence of you this morning as an individual today. That you have on your mind, your marriage, your family, your school assignments, your work, your retirement, what's going on in these parts of your life. And most of all, what's ahead for you, where you are, your relationships, and your spiritual life. Just possibly you may look out upon your life, either as a church or as an individual, and wonder, how come after all this, I get stuck in Crete? First point today, every purpose in life tends to run out. I grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina. They had a wonderful park there, Freedom Park, and we had monkey rings. You remember what monkey rings are? You hold on to one ring and you swing out to catch the next, and you let go of one and swing out again to another, hand after hand. But if you don't keep swinging and moving, if you get yourself hung in the middle, couldn't get yourself going, and there was only one thing to do, and that was to drop. And I think that happens in our life. We seem to get hung in the middle, and then we can't get back, and we can't get forward, can't get ahead. How come I get stuck here? One ring of experience is intended to lead to the others. And you have to let go and take the next experience as it comes. Paul wrote to the Philippians, forgetting the things that are behind me, I reach for the new, that I might press on. In our daily lives, in our work, in our marriages, many men and women and young people kind of get stuck between two rings. They start yelling back and forth. No future in this job, no hope in this marriage, no help for my personality. How come I get stranded in this spot? That's the question we understand. Answer. In every situation, there is a deeper purpose than we currently recognize. You and I are new friends here in these days, but I know there is a depth to you that I could not possibly plumb if I were to live with you for the rest of my life. And I know that there is a depth within every one of you that you yourself do not yet know. You haven't yet gotten to that point, even in understanding yourself. This is a fine church worshiping here today. But you have the capacity to influence the events in and beyond this community that you do not yet know. And this is what we have to learn in every sphere of life. We may think we are about where we ought to be, yet we have hardly begun to be a church, to be a witness for Christ, to be a church leader, to be a committed member. Those marriages have hardly begun to get the dividends that are implicit in the marriage covenant. Most jobs hardly begin to draw out the fullest qualities and resources we have to offer, or dispense the fullest benefits that the job itself has to offer us. We tend to live on the surfaces of life, just skimming up around the top, until we are felt empty and little, and we say, "Oh Lord, how come I'm stuck here? What's next?" Every situation has a deeper purpose if you look for it than we are presently observing. And every purpose not only has to be renewed, but can be renewed and deepened, because there is this resonant purpose in every situation which God himself has for us. God is the key. I love the story of Titus. You see, Paul played Titus off against Timothy. Timothy had a lovely mother and grandmother. We read about this in that epistle to Timothy. Timothy, I think, was a graceful type. Titus was a Gentile. Titus was, I think, a little bit more the pragmatic, rough type. I guess you could say Titus was a Virginia Tech type of guy. Timothy was a University of Virginia man. But Paul needed both for his God's work. But whenever there was a tough job to do, Paul sent in Titus. For example, when Paul wanted to break open the Galatian situation that a believer did not have to be circumcised and go through the Jewish ritual, Paul sent tough-minded Titus in there. And Titus withstood all that societal pressure that was brought to bear on him without cracking. And when Paul wanted to make an arbitration with the Corinthian church, who were out of sorts with him, Paul sent Titus. And Titus went in and did all the tough negotiating. And then Paul sits down and writes, "Love suffers long and is kind, hopes all things, believes all things." You know, Titus was the one who went to Corinth and took all the rap, and then Paul walks in saying, "And the greatest of these is love." And when Paul wanted to raise money, whom did he send to Philippi and to other places? Not Timothy, nor himself. He sent Titus. Titus went up to this military garrison town in Philippi in Macedonia, in those great border hills of Macedonia, and he not only persuaded them to give, they gave their own hearts. And it's recorded in Philippians, they gave themselves beyond measure of the whole Mediterranean basin of people who love Jesus. What a job Titus did. So you see, Titus gets a little sympathy from us for his heart. After all those things, after the money raising, after the negotiating with Corinth, and with the pressure being put upon to open up the Galatian circumcision controversy, dear Paul, how come I get stuck in Crete now, at this stage of my career, after all I've done for you? 157 miles long, 37 miles wide. And Paul writes very patiently. Now look, Titus, look at the providence of God and the foolishness of preaching. God has sent you there, not for yourself, but for you to ordain other people to do the job. Leaders who are given to responsibility and hospitality and who love Christ. Ordain these protégés, and then I'll move you on. By the way, just a historical footnote at the end of this story, Titus' last parish happened to be in Dalmatia, on the beautiful waters of the Adriatic. Dalmatia, now in Croatia. You find a reference to it in 2 Timothy 4:10. Titus ends up by the lovely waters of the Adriatic. And this is a message for us from God. Every purpose comes in steps and stages, and there is always a deeper level for us to discover and into which we should go. A practical application of it. A young wife said across the supper table to her husband, "Why are you so quiet tonight?" "Well, I have something to talk over with you that I'm not too happy to discuss." She said, "Well, you might as well get it out and get it over with." "Okay," he said. "You know how I've been worried about my father living alone, aged as he is?" She said, "Yes, I know. He's practically senile." The husband said, "Well, I don't know what to do with him. I've been thinking." She said, "I know exactly what you're thinking. You want to know if he can come and live with us, don't you? Isn't it enough that we have an autistic son, and then you want to bring your father here and add to it? Who do you think I am? How much do you think I can stand?" He replied, "I don't know what to do, honey, but that's the problem, and you've taken the words right out of my mouth. That's what I'm thinking." She said, "Well, let's not talk about it tonight." But she was a good woman, and she slept little and prayed much. The next few days she wrestled, and finally she said to her husband, "Okay, you can bring your father to live with us. God will give us the strength somehow to bear it." She wrote a letter 3 years later in which she said, "Little did I know as I surrendered that to God out of duty and love to my husband, and that senile old man came to live in our home, that he would become the nursemaid to our autistic son and would hold him and rock him and sing to him and love him and teach him a little bit how to speak and write and to draw pictures, and to be his constant companion and set our son at liberty before my father-in-law died within the 3 years. How glad I am that I had the courage to trust God to send me through that experience." That's what I call a Crete experience. And that's what I mean. We don't know what deeper purposes of God we can find if we dare to reach out to new reams of experience. We live an affluent and comfortable life here, and we're brittle and don't like taking risks. Sometimes it's the Crete that mellows us and brings us to a deeper life. I once saw a story about a man in retirement named Frank Bucklemeyer. Frank Bucklemeyer lives an austere Spartan life. All he has is a modest Social Security stipend. He has no family, few material things. He could have cursed God. Instead, he sleeps in very small quarters. He eats a hearty oatmeal breakfast and a light lunch. He goes to the veterans' hospitals, to their bureaus of social service, and says, "I'm going to be in your community for a while, and I'll give you my free services." And he spends the day at the disposal of the social services department of the Veterans Hospital, writing letters, reading, running errands, being a friend to veterans who have been confined for months. And he has found life and joy and health and purpose in a really very diminutive, narrow life where many men and women could have said, how come I get stuck here in my retirement? There's a purpose in every situation. Every situation has a purpose in it if you'll look for it. And the way to find it is to know that purposes do not come in complete mosaics with descriptions. They come in stages and in pieces, and sometimes they have to be fit together through patience and deeper insight. You have to move processionally to get from one point to the other. You may say, "Speak, Lord, thy servant hears," only we usually mean, "Lord, give me a full printout of the text." One of the things to do is to serve every situation fully, right where you are. Many of us ministers wish that we had gotten called to another church, just like some of our members wish we had gotten called to another church. I was in my first pastorate for 15 years. I will admit to you that several times in my ministry I naturally wished for a fresh start somewhere else. But I got called back to the same church, a deeper purpose in the same situation. And oftentimes we wear out in a position or in our place of work or business or school, and we think, I've got to be moving someplace new. But it may be just because we haven't drilled very deeply down right where we are, and there's a deeper purpose we need to be finding. Now, there's a type of Holy Spirit conversation we can have. If we learn to trust God in whatever situation we find ourselves. Someone once wrote, how many a Christian pilgrim would never have seen anything of the spiritual manna and the spiritual stream from the rock had God listened to him when with fear and trembling he besought God not to lead him into a desert. Let me read it once more. How many a Christian pilgrim would never have seen anything of the spiritual manna and the spiritual stream from the rock had God listened when with fear and trembling he besought God not to lead him into a desert. Your life has a deeper purpose. If with patience and trusting you will seek it. Titus was in his creed to enrich other people's lives as he was meant to ordain leaders, to developing their love for Christ and his church. It is also true for us that everyone we see, we can enrich in some way. We can learn new skills in how to reach people and praise people and encourage people, be their spiritual guides. And who knows but that we were sent to Crete to turn someone around who in turn may turn this whole crazy world around in God's name. So, go deeper, dear friends. Your homes, your marriages, your jobs, in your community, in your church experience through these times, because you have not even begun to plumb the depths yet in discovering what God wills for you to be in you. And use your faith instead of your genius to open doors. Glory be to God.